And these problems are going to be doing some straightforward translation to equations. Here it says 8 times the number plus 7 is 2,559. Find the number. So it's pretty much every time you see a phrase 8 times a number, that number that they're referring to, you can call it whatever variable you want, x or n, whatever you want. I'm going to put n. So 8 times n plus 7 is 2559, so it equals to 2,559. So your job is to find that number, and all you really need to do here is do what we did before with the equation. Solve for that number, solve for that variable n. So we're going to subtract 7 on both sides. We're going to get 8 times n equals 2552. And if you want to figure it out, just go ahead and divide 2552 by 8, and you're going to get 319. So divide by 8, n is 319. Typically in a problem like this, it's not enough to say n is 319. You normally want to say the number is 319. It's just the preferred way. I won't count it wrong, but that's if you have a word problem, you want to answer it in a sentence. 7 less than 4 times a number is negative 27. Find the number. 7 less than 4 times a number. So here's a key right there. 4 times a number. That's 4n. 4 times n. 4 times the number. But be careful here. It says 7 less than that. So that means take this 4n and then 7 less than that. So it's 4n minus 7. The common mistake for students is to put 7 minus 4n when it says 7 less than 4 times the number. So it's like 7 subtracted from. Be very careful. Is negative 27. Find the number. Well, here's our equation. Let's just find the number by doing what we learned in the previous sections. So 4 times n equals negative 27 plus 7. That's negative 20. You actually subtract. They're not the same sign, so it's not two negatives that we're adding, two debts, two positives. It's a negative, a debt, and a gain. So it's negative 20. 4 times n equals negative 20. Let's divide by 4, and we're going to figure out what our number is. Our number is negative 5. So once again, the number is negative 5. Okay, twice a number minus 30 is the same as the number increased by 10. Find the number. Twice a number means 2 times a number. Minus 30 is the same as the number, that's n, increased by 10. Find the number. Okay, so it's just an equation. We got to get our variables on the same side. We can't combine those two n's, the two variables with an n. So I subtract n to get rid of it from one side. We get n minus 30 equals 10. Add 30. We want to get n by itself now. So we're going to get here that n equals 40. If you ever want to check your work, well, let me go ahead and write it the proper way. The number is 30. 30. Let's try 40. If you ever want to check your work, just double check it. 2 times 40, twice the number, twice the 40 is 80, minus 30, that's 50, is the same as the number, which was 40, increased by 10, 50. The difference of 3 times a number and 18 is the same as the sum of 4 times a number and 7. Find the number. Okay, the difference, that means we're subtracting. The difference of 3 times a number and 18, so the difference of that would be 3n minus 18, is the same as the sum of, that means we're adding, 4 times a number and 7. We're adding those. Find the number. Okay, here's our equation. We just got to solve for the variable. So we can't combine these variables. We got to get them on the same side here in order to combine them. So I'm going to go ahead and subtract the 3n from this side. I know a lot of you are going to subtract the 4n. It doesn't matter. The idea is you want to get the n's together. Notice that minus stays with the 18 equals 4n minus 3n is n. I chose to move the 3n instead, y'all, so that I wouldn't get a negative. If you would have moved the 4n, you would have gotten a negative. It's still the same work. It's fine. But students tend to make more mistakes when there's negatives. 4n minus 3n is 1n plus 7. So to get that n by itself, now that I put all my n's on this side, if I want to get that by itself, then I want to move all my other numbers to the other side. So I want to move the 7, not the 18, but the 7. Negative 18 take away 7 is negative 25. Again, for those of you that struggle with that, get your calculator until you get comfortable. Negative 18 minus 7, negative 25, equals n. So the number is negative 25. I know you're thinking, do I always have to write it in a sentence? No. Here we're looking at a word problem. It says Joe and Bob deposited some money into a bank account. Together they deposited $7,500. But Joe deposited 5 times more than Bob. How much did each person invest or deposit? So as long as you understand this problem, these two guys put money into an account. Together they put $7,500. You see that right there. Joe deposited 5 times more than Bob. So some of you might be reading this and you might analytically already know what to do. You might already be thinking, oh, all you got to do is divide this into 6 parts and he got 1 part, the other guy's got 5 parts. If you're good at that, great. I'm not going to take away from that. But for those of you who can't see that, I'm going to go ahead and try to show you the algebra behind problems like this. And there's a lot of ways of doing this. But I'm going to just show you the way we do this with 1 variable instead of 2. The question is, how much did each person invest? So there's 2 people. So I'm going to write their names right here. Joe and Bob. They both put in some money into an account. So typically whatever we're looking for, I like to write it here on the side. And I draw a little arrow because that arrow tells me how I'm going to represent each person. So if I read it, it says, together they deposited $7,500. Joe deposited 5 times more than Bob. Joe deposited 5 times more than Bob. So I got to figure out what they both put in there. And I could put, some students are going to use 2 variables. They're going to put, Joe put in X and Bob put in Y. I'm going to try to avoid doing that. I'm going to do it with 1 variable. So the idea is, we don't know how much they put in. It's going to be our X's. The question is, who do we put X in this case? There's 2 people. Well, the trick to this is to read the problem carefully and read the part right here which says Joe deposited 5 times more than Bob. I have no idea how much Bob put in. So because of that, I don't know what Bob put in. Bob is going to be my X. My X meaning Bob put in X amount. We don't know. That's our variable. But if I declare Bob to be my X, or in other words, X, the amount that Joe or Bob deposited was X. Then the amount that Joe deposited, it says here, Joe deposited 5 times more than Bob. Well, if Bob did X, then Joe must have done whatever Bob did times 5. So 5X, or 5 times X. Now what we know is this. We know that Joe plus Bob in this case has to equal to 7,500. Not necessarily Joe. I should be more careful here. It should be the amount that Joe deposited plus the amount that Bob deposited should be 7,500. Not actually Joe, but the amount that he put and the amount that Bob put. Well, the amount that Joe put was 5x plus the amount that Bob put is x. We have that labeled here. Bob deposited X amount, Joe deposited 5X amount. That has to equal to 7,500. So now we have an equation. See, the nice thing about this problem is we have a situation where there was no equation given to us. It was our job to determine this equation based on information in the problem. And the way we started was we said, let's label what we're looking for with variables. We don't know what they are, so let's put a variable there. And we did. Now we came up with this. This is just an equation where we combine like terms. These 2 terms are on the same side. 5x plus 1x makes 6x equals 7,500. So if you want to know the answer, just take 7,500 divided by 6, and you're going to get 1250. But be very careful that you finish this problem correctly. You're going to get that x equals 1250, 1,250. But make sure you don't stop there, and make sure you tie it back into the problem. If you're saying that x equals 1250, go back and apply it to what we said. So what we're going to say then is Bob deposited $1,250, because remember, Bob was our x. Joe deposited 5 times more than Bob, or 5 times x. So multiply that by 5 and you'll get 6,250. If you notice, if you add that amount, it equals to the $7,500 they put in. So some of you may be able to do a problem like this analytically, just thinking through without having to do anything with x's, but we want you to try to appreciate and understand how algebra is used to solve equations or situations like this where there's parts missing. Once you get good at establishing or assigning variables to a situation, coming up with an equation, it becomes more, I guess, routine and a lot easier, especially when the problems get a little bit nastier. On Sunday, October 12, 2014, a miracle occurred in Seattle. The Dallas Cowboys scored 7 more points than the Seattle Seahawks and won the game. If the total number of points scored in the game was 53, how many points did each team score? You can tell I'm not a big believer in the Cowboys. Some students are going to look at this problem and they're just going to start thinking, okay, let me just 53, take half of it, add 7. They're going to think of this analytically. Again, I want to show you the algebra. So the Dallas Cowboys scored 7 more points than the Seattle Seahawks and won the game. The total number of points in the game was 53. How many points did each team score? So because we're looking for how many points the Cowboys scored and how many points the Seahawks scored, I'm going to start by putting my two variables are going to be, I'm going to write Dallas score and the Seahawks score. If you can read this. That's what we're looking for. How many points did each team score? So like on the previous video, one of this is going to be our x. One of these. Either the Dallas is going to be our x or the Seahawks is going to be our x. The way you figure it out is you read the story again. It says the Dallas Cowboys scored 7 more points than the Seattle Seahawks. So because the Dallas depends on what the Seahawks scored. Dallas scored 7 more than the Seahawks. We have no idea what the Seahawks scored. Seahawks will be our x. The Seahawks scored x points. We don't know. But we do know once we put this that Dallas scored 7 more than that. So Dallas scored whatever the Seahawks scored plus 7 more. And we also know this. If you take the Dallas score plus the Seahawks score, the total was 53 points. So if you take the Dallas score, which was x plus 7, plus what the Seahawks scored, which was x, it should equal to 53 points. So we've just come up with an equation here that we can solve using the variable x. So the first thing we notice is we have two terms with an x that we can combine. 1x plus 1x. We combine them because they're on the same side. That's 2x and leave the 7 equals 53. We're going to solve for x, so that means we want to get our constant terms on the other side. We're going to get 2x equals 46. 2 times x equals 46, so we're going to finish off and say x is 23. But if you want to solve for x completely, just divide by that 2 to get rid of it. So we get x is 23. But remember, that's not the answer. Please don't stop there and say, okay, x equals 23, move on. No, answer the question. The question was, how many points did each team score? Go back and put that into your problem. So now we know the Seahawks scored X amount of points, which was 23 points, and the Cowboys scored, it's 7 more points than the Seahawks, so if X is 23, 23 plus 7, Cowboys scored 30. Notice if you add up the score, it's a score of 53, so it works perfect. In 2014 in Hidalgo County, Rene Guerra received 13,000 fewer votes than Ricardo Rodriguez for district attorney. If a total of 45,000 people voted in the election, how many votes did each candidate receive? How many votes did each candidate receive? There's two candidates, Rene Guerra and Ricardo Rodriguez. So I'm going to use G for Guerra. G is, or I'm going to use, I'm sorry, not G. I'm going to put Guerra's votes and Ricardo's votes. Since the question was how many votes did each candidate receive, that's what we're going to use to express right here. We're going to express one for each person's votes. One of them will be X. Always this is going to be the case. One of the things you're looking for will be X. Read the story. Rene Guerra received 13,000 fewer votes than Ricardo. I can't even say his name. He lives right next to me. Ricardo Rodriguez. All right. Rene received 13,000 fewer votes than Ricardo. So because we have no idea how many Ricardo got, Ricardo will be our X. We don't know what he got. But whatever he got, we know Rene got 13,000 less than him. So don't just write 13,000. A lot of students say, okay, he got 13,000. No, he didn't. It didn't say he got 13,000 votes. Rene got 13,000 fewer votes than Ricardo. So Rene would be X, which is Ricardo's, minus 13,000. We know there was a total of 45,000, so we know that Guerra plus Ricardo has to equal to 45 grand. So Guerra was X minus 13,000 plus Ricardo was X equals to 45,000. Combine our X terms are on the same side. We have our equation now, so that's going to be 2X minus 13,000 equals 45,000. And typical same stuff. We want to solve for X, so we're going to add 13 grand to both sides. We're going to get 2X equals to 58,000. Divide both sides by 2. Since it says 2 times X equals 58,000, X equals to, really, Pablo? You're thinking about this that long. 29,000. 29,000. Now, again, tie it to the problem. That means Ricardo got X votes, which is 29,000 votes, and Guerra got X minus 13,000. 29,000 minus 13,000 would be 16,000 votes. If you add them all up, sure enough, there's 45,000 votes right there. You don't have to do it algebraically. I know some of you are going to think about this another way. I'm just trying to get you to see how algebra can be used. Okay, here it says, use the fact that the sum of the interior angles of any triangle is 180 degrees to solve for X. So it's basically telling you that when you have a triangle, you've got three angles inside of it. We got this one, and this one. In any triangle, if you add up the angles inside, it's always 180 degrees. Well, in this particular case, one of our angles is X, the other one's also X, and the other one's 9 less than these. So if I want to solve this, all I got to do is say, all right, if I add the three angles, X plus this angle X plus that angle, which is X minus 9, the total should be 180 degrees. Alright, well then solve by combining these three X terms. They're all on the same side. 1X plus 1X plus 1X is 3X. Minus 9 equals 180. Let's go ahead and solve this for X. So we're going to add 9 to both sides. We're going to get that 3 times X equals 189. 3 times what is 189? X is going to be 63 if we just divide both sides by 3 here. So X is 63. The problem just says solve for X. So we know that X is 63, but if I wanted to go ahead and tie it back in, I would say that this is a 63 degree angle. 63 degree angle. 63 minus 9 would be 54 degree angle. It's called a scaling triangle. Two angles are the same. Add them all up, you get 180.